You open your phone at 11 p.m. You tell yourself it's just for a second. 20 minutes later, you're still scrolling, and you don't even remember what you were looking for. But the real answer is far stranger. Your brain isn't broken. It's ancient. Every human alive today carries a nervous system built for a world that no longer exists. A world with scarce food, scarce mates, scarce comfort. In that world, wanting things fast and acting on them fast kept you alive. Today, that same wiring gets pointed at things that never existed 100,000 years ago. Junk food. Endless images.
Instant validation.
Is it any wonder the pull feels so hard to resist? Psychologists call the craving you feel lust when it's aimed at another person, but the underlying machinery is the same machinery behind every impulse you've ever fought. Researchers have a simpler name for it. They call it the hot system. Walter Mischel, the psychologist behind the famous marshmallow experiment at Stanford, spent decades studying exactly this. In his experiments, children were left alone in a room with a single marshmallow. They were told that if they waited without eating it, they'd get 2 marshmallows later. Some children waited. Many didn't. What Mischel discovered wasn't about willpower being a fixed trait. It was about strategy. The children who waited longest weren't the most disciplined. They were the ones who found ways to distract themselves. They looked away. They sang songs. They pretended the marshmallow was a cloud instead of food. That single insight changed how scientists understand self-control. It isn't a muscle you're born with in fixed supply. It's a set of techniques. And those techniques are exactly what ancient humans, without knowing any of the neuroscience, figured out through trial and error long before psychology existed as a field. So what did they actually do? Here are 7 of them. 7 strategies, some ancient, some modern, all backed by real research on how the brain handles desire. The first is distance. Not emotional distance. Physical distance. Studies on temptation consistently show that proximity is the single biggest predictor of whether you'll act on an urge. The closer something is, the harder your prefrontal cortex has to work to override it. Ancient hunter-gatherer bands intuitively understood this. Courtship rituals in many early human societies built in physical separation, chaperones, or public settings specifically to reduce private opportunity. It wasn't about morality alone. It was about architecture. Remove the opportunity, and the urge has nowhere to land. The second is delay. This is Mischel's discovery in action. When a craving hits, it typically peaks within minutes and then fades if you don't feed it. Neuroscientists call this the urge surfing window. You don't have to defeat the wave. You just have to survive it. 10 minutes. That's often all it takes for the hot system to cool down enough for the rational brain to step back in. The third is reframing. This one comes straight from Mischel's marshmallow kids. The ones who imagined the marshmallow as something other than food weakened its pull. Modern therapists use the same trick with intrusive cravings. You mentally strip the object of its charged meaning. You look at it, and instead of letting your brain build a story around it, you just notice it as shape, as texture, as biology. The fourth is the environment shift. Behavioral scientist Wendy Wood, who has spent her career studying habits at the University of Southern California, found that most of what we call willpower is actually just environment design. People with strong self-control aren't fighting more battles than everyone else. They're avoiding the battles altogether by changing their surroundings before temptation even appears. Ancient humans did this instinctively too, structuring communal living, shared sleeping spaces, and group accountability so that private temptation had fewer places to hide. The fifth is purpose redirection. When a craving hits, redirecting that same energy toward a goal-driven task doesn't suppress the urge, it repurposes it. The dopamine circuit that lights up during desire is the same circuit that lights up during focused pursuit of any reward, sexual or otherwise. Ancient rites of passage often demanded intense physical or intellectual labor during the years when desire peaked biologically, not as punishment, but as redirection of the exact same neurochemical fuel. The sixth is social accountability. Roy Baumeister, one of the most cited psychologists in the study of self-control, found that willpower functions less like an individual trait and more like a shared resource. People who tell someone else about their goal are dramatically more likely to follow through. Small ancestral communities had almost no privacy. Every choice was visible to the group. That visibility wasn't just social pressure. It was a built-in support system. The seventh, and the one modern life has almost entirely erased, is boredom tolerance. Discomfort used to be unavoidable. Waiting was normal. Idle time wasn't instantly filled. Today, the moment a craving or discomfort appears, most people reach for a screen, a snack, or a distraction within seconds. Research on attention spans shows this constant filling of idle moments actually weakens your capacity to sit with discomfort at all, which paradoxically makes every craving that follows feel more urgent. Ancient humans, whether they wanted to or not, spent enormous amounts of time simply waiting. Waiting for food to cook. Waiting for the day to end. Waiting, unmedicated by dopamine hits, for nothing in particular. That waiting was quietly training the same muscle every marshmallow experiment would later measure. Here's the counterintuitive twist. None of these 7 strategies were ever really about lust specifically. They were about desire in general, and lust is just the version of desire wired most directly into your evolutionary survival code. Your ancestors who felt no pull toward connection or reproduction simply didn't pass on their genes. The urge you fight today isn't a personal flaw. It's a signal that your biology worked exactly as intended for millions of years of a world that has since completely changed shape. And this is where it gets stranger still. The very same circuitry evolution built for one narrow purpose has been hijacked by nearly everything modern life offers. Social media platforms are engineered by teams who studied this exact neuroscience, deliberately designing feeds that trigger the identical dopamine anticipation loop tied to desire. When you feel the pull to check a notification, you are, on a chemical level, running the same ancient software your ancestors ran when they spotted something they wanted across a crowded campfire. So the question was never really, how do you defeat lust? The question was always, how do you work with a system that evolution built to be relentless, in a world evolution never designed for? Every strategy that works, distance, delay, reframing, environment, redirection, accountability, and tolerance for discomfort, works because it respects that biology instead of fighting it directly. You cannot out-willpower a system 4 million years in the making. You can only outsmart it. Think about the last time you resisted something you wanted badly. Chances are you didn't win through sheer force. You won because you left the room, or waited it out, or told someone, or redirected the energy somewhere else. That wasn't weakness disguised as strength. That was exactly how the system was always supposed to work. Tonight, when a craving shows up, whatever form it takes, you won't need to ask why it feels so overwhelming. You'll know. It's not a flaw in you. It's a message from every ancestor who ever felt the same pull and found a way through it, passed down and still running, patiently waiting for you to work with it instead of against it.